Oversupply. Where's the first location that comes to your mind right now? If you ask me, that location is Lentor. With 7 launches and close to 4,000 units coming its way, the question really isn't if that area is oversupplied or not, cause it is. The real question lies in how would that oversupply impact profitability in that area. To answer that question, I spent the last 2 days combing through all the operational MRT stations in Singapore. Yes, all 137 of them, in order to list down the supply of private residential units within 500 meters of each of them and analyzing the price performances of those condominiums. And here's what I found. Here you can see all the MRT stations in Singapore, all the private residential unit supply within 500 meters of them, and the average annualized gains. All this data consolidated into this table together with all the condominiums and the details of those condominiums. Now, since I've already put in all the time, energy, effort, it just seems like a little bit of a waste to just use this for this one video. So here's an interesting thought. Why don't you let me know in the comments what else you think we can utilize this data for? What kind of interesting trend analysis, what kind of data points you would like to pull out from this table. And if I find your suggestion interesting and utilize it in my next video, I'm gonna thank you by sending you $100 in cold hard cash. For this video, we're gonna utilize that data to answer 3 main questions. Question number 1. How much supply is too much? And we're going to utilize profitability as a benchmark. Question number 2, with all that supply in Lentor coming online within 3 to 4 years of one another, how is that going to impact profitability? Are we able to draw reference from some case studies of the past to help us with our analysis? And question number 3, we're going to analyze the top performing condos in the most oversupplied areas. What are their characteristics? And can we draw parallels between those condos and the ones coming up in the Lentor area? And let's begin with the first question. How much supply is oversupplied? So how are we going to determine how much supply is oversupplied? So what I've done is to average out the average annualized gains of all the MRT stations, okay? And we have the result of 2.8% average annualized gains per annum. So now if your result is above that, it's good, and if it's below that, not so good. So with that, we can know how each and every one of those stations fare, right? So we can see over here, and quite surprisingly, so I'm not sure if those of you know, I for a fact didn't know that Great World MRT is the highest supplied area in Singapore, with 5,896 units within 500 meters of the MRT, and they achieve an average annualized gain of 2.56%, which falls short of the 2.8% average across all the MRTs. And as we go down this list, so now with Lentor coming in at 4,000 units, you'll be surprised to also find out that it's not going to be the most oversupplied area in Singapore. It will probably come in about 4th or 5th position, probably 4th position, losing to Great World, Tanah Merah and Newton. And straight off the bat, you're going to notice that in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they all fall under the 2.8% average across all the MRTs. It's only when you go to Queenstown that we start to beat out the 2.8%. So now, let's move on with the analysis. As you can see and look down over here, we have actually quite a fair number in excess of 3,000 units, and some of them do well. When I say well, it's above the 2.8%, some not so well. And the clearest as day ones, and I've mentioned this quite a few times, is the downtown and Shenton Way area, they don't tend to perform very well. Okay, if we take an average of the top 10, okay, top 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so in excess of 3,600 units, and average that out, you will achieve a result of 2.3. Not so good, right? Under the 2.8. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, I decided not to analyze the performance or take into consideration the performance of those with too little units, right? As a matter of fact, if they are below, I decided to disregard those that are under 2,000 units, because with a lack of number of units, there's a lack of critical mass of data, and I'm afraid that the data may be skewed or may not be the most reflective, right? So I felt the most comfortable just taking 2,000 and above. Okay, so here's what I did. I took the average of the MRTs above 2,000, the units above 2,000 are 10, the average of 10, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, up to Kovan, and I took an average of these. And the results were quite surprising, right? They came up to an average of 3.4%. So now that is quite a fair bit higher than the average of the top 10 and surpasses the average of all the MRTs at 2.8. So here's another interesting data point that I did. As you can see in the top 10, right, all the way until Red Hill, right, there's two sort of bad apples pulling down the average. So if we strip out these two, the average comes up to quite similar to the rest of the MRTs at 2.8. Right, so here is one conclusion, that stripping out the District 1s are not CCR, right? That's just the District 1, the CBD condominiums that traditionally do not do well. The oversupplied areas do perform quite similar to the rest of the MRTs in Singapore in terms of regardless of their supply. So now that's one conclusion that we get out of the whole thing, okay? And so what I also did from there is to take an average of the 3,000. So the 2,000 and above, right, 2,000 to 2,005, 2,600, the average of those, and then 3,000 plus 10, okay? And so what I did was from here, 3,000 plus 10, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, okay? Over here, we saw the average for all of this, and that came out to 2.6. So for bottom 2,000, it's 3.4. Average of 3,000 and above, it's 2.6. And top 10, minusing away District 1 is 2.8. So as not to confuse you guys, the conclusion we get out of the whole thing is that the sweet spot supply in and around the MRT, it's about the 2,000 unit mark. Now with close to 4,000 units coming online in the Lentor area, that is twice the number of our sweet spot supply at 2,000 units. So now the question goes to you guys. How do you think Lentor is going to measure up with the other MRT stations in our oversupply chart? Will it beat out the 2.8% average, or will it underperform that 2.8% average? Let us know in the comments below. If you've appreciated the amount of effort that we've put in to create this video, please do like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button to give us a little bit of motivation to continue putting in the hard work to create videos like that. Now back to the video. Now, that is just one data point to analyze this whole supply situation. Now moving on to the second point. With all that supply coming in very close to one another, ranging 3 to 4 years apart, how is that going to affect the profitability in that area? Now, what I'm going to do next is to bring out some past case studies of other MRT stations with supply that is very close to one another, and let's see what are some of the takeaways that we can derive from them. And because there isn't anywhere else in Singapore that is like Lentor with 4,000 units coming in within 3 to 4 years of one another. I've picked out 4 different case studies to try and extract out the essence of each and every one of them, to try and help us derive a reasonable conclusion. And I start off first with Pasir Ris. Let's take a look. Why I picked the Pasir Ris area? Because it is the most similar in terms of the number of units TOPing close to one another. Now, in order for me to do that and to bring out this data, I had to go slightly further than the 500 meters distance from the MRT that we utilized earlier for the rest of the data. I had to go all the way up to Oasis, okay? But as you can see, we have a total of 4,800 units TOPing within the space of 7 years from one another, from 2011 all the way to 2018. Now let's take a look at how they performed. So you can see that the average annualized gains for all the condos worked out to be 3.89%. Now, as compared to our first sheet, it's almost 1% higher than the average of all the other MRT stations, and even beats out our sweet spot 2K supply that's averaging 3.4%. So for all intents and purposes, Pasir Ris have done very well. And for our second case study, I've chosen Tanah Merah. And the reason why I chose Tanah Merah is because I feel it's very similar in makeup to what we have in Lentor. There's primarily landed properties and condominiums. Now, because I've utilized Pasir Ris as the first case study, some of you may say, hey, Pasir Ris have a lot of HDB upgraders, hence its strong performance. So which is why for the second case study, I've chosen Tanah Merah that doesn't have that many HDB upgraders, sort of to balance out those two case studies. And the second reason is because in terms of the number of units supplied in that area is quite close as well to what we have in Lentor. Tanah Merah 3,600 units approximately, while we have 4,000 units in Lentor. Now let's take a look at the performance, okay? So we have Grandeur Park, Glades, Urban Vista, Eco, Optima, Casa Merah, all TOPing within 11 years of one another. Now if we go back and take a look at their performance, you notice the average is 2.58%. Now, that is quite a fair bit lower than the 3.89 that we have at Pasir Ris, and also below the average of what we see in all the MRTs at 2.8. Now, what's the reason for the underperformance? Now, you can see over here we have two bad apples. And which ones are the bad apples, okay? They are Urban Vista and the Glades. I've talked about these two condominiums before and the reasons for their underperformance. But in a quick summary, I boil their underperformance, especially for Urban Vista, down to the fact that there are just too many dual key units over there. The layouts aren't fantastic. They have loft units, and so there are just basically too many investors in that condominium. And adding on to the fact that the condo sales stretched through the 2013 period, so there was a period where the developers have adjusted their prices down. So all that add together to have basically resulted in very bad performance over at Urban Vista. Similarly with the Glades, where sales have stretched through the 2013 cooling measures, all of these have caused sort of underperformance of those condominiums. Because if you see, the Glades and Grandeur Park are basically side by side, separated with one future plot that will come up on one side of Tanah Merah MRT, but they have drastically different performances. Now, if we strip out those two bad apples, the performance over in Tanah Merah is actually quite decent. So conclusion from this Tanah Merah case study is that the oversupply is not going to kill you, the timing and the type of purchase will. And for case study number 3, I've chosen Bartley. And I have a couple of reasons why I chose Bartley. Reason number 1, again, is because of its makeup. Quite similar to what we have in Lentor, being primarily landed and condominiums surrounding the MRT. Yes, you may say, but Bidadari is around the corner, there's also a lot of new HDBs coming up over there. But those are very new HDBs, so I wouldn't attribute any of this condo performance to the HDB upgraders in those new condos. Okay. Reason number 2 for me picking Bartley, I felt it brings a little bit more similarity in terms of number 1, having a good school as compared to Tanah Merah, right? In terms of that, to be more similar to Lentor, right? And reason number 2 is because the 99-year developments and quite a fair number of those supply were post-cooling measures supply, so it didn't really get affected that much as the Tanah Merah area, so hoping to bring a little bit of balance to the different case studies. Okay, so now let's take a look. Over here we have the most recent ones, Lilium and Gazania, and then we have quite popular developments like Botanic, Bartley, Ridge, and Bartley Residences, as well as some of the smaller boutique freehold developments. Okay, so as we can see over here, if we average out all of them, and I'm gonna remove Lilium and Gazania from the consideration because they do not have sufficient transactions, and I don't want them to sort of ruin the entire data point. So I've removed them. So excluding Lilium and Gazania, the performance comes up to 2.85. Now, if you remember, the average for the rest of the MRTs is 2.8, so now this beats them out ever so slightly. Now, another interesting fact, another interesting data, right, is that if we just look at the 99-year developments, for which all the Lentor developments are 99 years, and the reason why I say that is because Kensington Square, some of the freehold ones over here are quite boutique, yeah? And as we know, the boutique developments don't really do that well, especially if they are in the District 19 area. So now if we remove that and just focus on the performance of Bartley Residences, Bartley Ridge and Botanic, they actually do really well. So now if we take the conclusion from the area in Bartley, I feel now you can see a more relevant data. You can see a more consistent trend with Bartley and Tanah Merah. If we strip out some of the outliers, the general performance seems to be quite positive. And for case study number 4, my pick is Potong Pasir. And I kind of struggled for a while whether or not to pick Potong Pasir. The reason is because there really isn't that much similarity in terms of Potong Pasir with Lentor, right? Especially if you compare it to the first 3 case studies. It's located in the RCR, while Lentor is located in the OCR. The closest similarity that you may potentially have is the fact that there is a good school within 1 km vicinity of this area, and of course there's also, which is St. Andrews, there's also Hong Wen that probably cuts a little bit on the bottom side of Potong Pasir, but other than that, not very similar in terms of the makeup. But then I still chose to pick Potong Pasir. The reason is because we have a lot of developments, right? 11 developments TOPing within 9 years of one another, offering 2,000 units. And here we have basically an even split between freehold and 99-year developments, okay? And here's the results, right? If you average out all of them, the result is quite disappointing, only 1.97%. Okay, I just wanted to scratch that own itch of mine because I've always told people to be aware of Potong Pasir because I know that the developments there have not really been performing all that well, and also because if you drive down, you're just going to notice there's going to be a lot of there's a lot of condos around the MRT station, so immediately you feel that place is oversupplied already. So that's why I threw it inside as well, just to take a look at how it is. Okay, and true enough, right? the result, it's below the average of what we see from the other condominiums. Now, is this going to be a cause of concern for Lentor? Will Lentor be more similar to Pasir Ris, more similar to Tanah Merah, excluding the bad apples, more similar to Bartley, especially the Bartley 99 developments, or will it be like Potong Pasir? Now let's break it down, okay? If you take a look at the developments, again, Potong Pasir, I feel is still feeling a little bit of hangover from the 2013 cooling measures, because some of the 99 developments that didn't perform all that well, for example, St. Ritz, you can see annualized gain negative 0.1 for a 99-year development, so close to MRT. That is very, very surprising. And I boil it really down to the fact that sales have had to stretch through the cooling measure period, because other than that, fundamentals, technically it shouldn't perform that badly. I haven't really dived too deep into St. Ritz yet. There really isn't that much supply over there to begin with anyway, but that is my guess, okay? Another one that didn't do well, you can see, is actually also Venue Residences. I mean, quite okay, but you know, not what you expect, not anywhere close to the 99-year developments like what we see in Bartley lah. Let's take a look at this one over here, minus 0.5% annualized 18 Woodsville, 100 units freehold development from 2015. So now, here, these are some of the. This is the reason why I picked Potong Pasir lah. It's because it's really an enigma. You really don't know why it's not doing well, but I think we have a savior over here, which is the Poise Residences, okay? Right on top of the MRT, one of our integrated developments, 731 units, TOP 2018. This one have done quite well. This is probably the carrier for the entire area at 4.2%. Now here's the takeaway, right? Which one is Venue? Sorry, not Venue. Poise most similar to, if you compare it to Lentor, right? So that's a clue that I have for you guys, right? In the oversupply area, you got to pick the best one, the most integrated one, the most convenient one, and you will do well. Now, summing up this point, oversupply is not going to kill you, but buying the wrong product at the wrong time will. And if you can capture HDB upgraders like our friends in Pasir Ris, you're going to do okay. But even if you can't, which is somewhat the concern over at Lentor due to the lack of HDB upgraders in that area, we can take reference from Bartley and from Tanah Merah to still do well, provided you buy the right product with the right characteristics. Now that brings us very nicely to our last point of this video. What are the key characteristics of the best performing condos in the most oversupplied areas? Now for our final point, we're going to take a look at some of the attributes of the best performing condos in the best performing oversupplied areas in Singapore. Let's take a look. So I've decided that it is probably more relevant for us to take a look at the better performing areas versus trying to find good performers in the underperforming areas, and also pick out some of the areas that is in the OCR and also in the RCR as opposed to the CCR. So what I did was to pick out Redhill, Lakeside, and Queenstown. Okay, now if we go over to this tab and how I've extracted out the best performing condominiums, we take a look at the average annualized gains, and I've only picked up those that exceed 4% average annualized gains. So over at the Lakeside area, we have Lakeshore and Caspian, okay, with 5.3 and 6.4%, and this is actually all the more impressive considering that these condos are quite old, built 2008 and built 2012. Okay, over at Queenstown, our candidates are a little bit younger. We have Queen's Peak and Sterling Residences, right? Newly TOP Sterling Residences. They come in at 5.5% and 4.2% average annualized gains. And over at Red Hill, we have Metropolitan and Atra that come in at 5.3% and 5.1%. Okay, and it's quite an interesting exercise because if we take a look at, if we compare and pull out all the data for all these 6 condos, they have very different ages, right? We have all the way from 2008 to 2022 TOP. They have quite different sizes as well in terms of the size of the development, the smallest being Metropolitan and the biggest being Sterling Residences at 1,259 units. Okay, we have already applied their somewhat locations in a sense of proximity to MRT because they're all within 500 meters from the MRT, right? So if we take a look at the first, second, third, even the fourth column, they have also a huge range, okay? We have the more recent condos like Sterling having low foreign ownership, all the way down to those pre-2013 that have a slightly higher number, like our friends in Metropolitan and Lakeshore especially, right? 16%, 16.1%. Okay, and we have prices that range from 800 PSF from 700 PSF all the way until 1,879 PSF. So I feel it's a really interesting exercise, useful exercise, so to speak, because it really doesn't matter whether it's cheap, young, far away, more foreign ownership, they all can make money. Yeah, they all have average annualized capital gains of above 4%. Okay, now let's move on to the next part where we try to extract out what are the key attributes and why did they outperform their peers in the similar area. And we start off first with the Lakeside, right? The furthest away one first, okay? So as you can see for Lakeside, right, we have I didn't include Lake Point in the discussion and also Lake Grand because they are the two most oldest and the newest one, okay? I focused our discussion on Park Vista, Lakeshore, Caspian and Lakefront, and I think you're gonna have quite an eye-opening takeaway over here. It took me a while, but here's my rationale on why Lakeshore and Caspian outperform Lakefront Residences, considering that they are just 6 years apart from one another. Okay, because you see their average annualized gains is easily half of one another. Yeah, and this is quite interesting because usually we think the younger one will make more money versus the older one. But in this case, it is on the flip side. The older one is actually making more than the younger one. So even beating out the youngest one, Lake Grand, right? the first place that I bought. So now let's take a look at what can some of the reasons be, right? What I think may be some of the reasons, okay? And what we're going to do in this exercise as well is to also go into each of the best performing condos and find out what makes them tick, right? What are the best performing unit types from these condos. So hopefully if you're looking to purchase in the Lentor area or any other areas, that helps you with your analysis as well. What are usually the best performing type of units, okay? So we start off first. Let's start off first by looking at what are the best performing kind of units, okay? We have Lakeshore first, and over here I've sorted them out by the highest annualized gains so that you can take a look at what are the kind of units that profit. The top 20 lah, yeah, top 20. We have, I feel probably 60% 3-bedders and 40% 2-bedders. A lot of them bought close to day one and they sold Interestingly, quite a wide range all the way from 2018 all the way to 2022. And it's also quite interesting because all these guys hold for quite long, okay? And still you annualize profits of quite a high number. You see, they can go up all the way close to making $900 over $1,000, yeah? Caspian, quite similar, okay? Their profit annualized is even higher, 5.9 to 7.7%, but this is the top 20 lah. You see people making 1.1 million with a 3-bedder bought in 09, right after the global financial crisis, selling just this year. A very auspicious unit number 0444. Very interesting, right? So over at Caspian, we have slightly more 4-bedders, yeah, and more 3-bedders. Not so many 2-bedders, only a handful of 2-bedders. So 2, 3, 4-bedders, very profitable. Lakeshore 2 and 3-bedders, primarily the 3-bedders that do better over at Lakeshore. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? Why is it that Lake Point, right, that is younger, underperformed Caspian and Lakefront? So, and this is sort of the conclusion that I got after really diving into the data. So, what I did was to pull out all the data for Lakefront residences, right? Similarly ranking them from highest annualized gains down. And actually, if you take a look on the higher range of a percentage annualized, the numbers don't differ too much from Caspian and Lakeshore, right? 5, 6, 7% one. But if you take a look, these guys that make the higher percentage annualized ones are the ones that sold sooner. Basically bought 2010 and sell 2013, 2014. Pay attention to this. This is where things get interesting, okay? And the one that sort of pull down the average are the ones that hold for longer time. They bought same time at the start 2010, but they sold, you see over here, more 2018. Actually, the longer they hold, the lower the returns. And it's going to be a lot more obvious once I pull out the charts for you guys to see over here. Okay, and as I zoom in, so follow me as I analyze this this chart. Notice so this one, the triangle, okay, it's the upward pointing triangle. Dark blue is Lakefront lah, the one that we want to take a look. So the time when they launch, okay, they launch before the cooling measures, okay, and they sold out before that. So this is not one of those case studies where the developers adjusted the price due to the cooling measures, right? Fortunately enough for the Lakefront owners, developers sold out before the cooling measures came, so we didn't really see a drop in price due to the cooling measures, right? That we saw over here for all the other units, Lakeshore, Park Vista, and Caspian, all saw a dip over here after 2013. After 2013, right? Even Caspian saw a dip, but Lakefront held pretty firm despite the cooling measure, because all of them, their entry prices were already quite a bit higher than the neighbors, right? So they couldn't really afford to sell it too cheap. And this, thankfully, being in the OCR, wasn't that speculated. Is my conclusion for it. So not many people dumped their unit off to the market, protecting them from that drop, if you can see it over here. Okay, now, but my conclusion is that why Lakeshore and Caspian can make more is really just because they have bought in much cheaper. You see, Lakeshore and Caspian is over here, because if you really go and see the entry price over here and the gap over here is still pretty much similar, so they have maintained that gap. Lakefront, Lakeshore, Caspian have maintained that gap. somewhat throughout. In the middle, it is stretched out. But this gap and this gap is actually quite similar. Yeah. Conclusion is that the way to invest, the way to sort of profit from the market has changed from the past. Okay, in the past is because the entry price is so low, you just hold out for long, you do well. Yeah, and we have seen here from lakefront that the guys that do better in terms of average annualized returns are the ones that flip out faster, make that switch faster. They gain more because the quantum of increment is not that much anymore, which is something that I've been saying quite often, because we have come into the mature part of the economy already, right? Singapore is getting more mature. We can't see the kind of quantums from 500 to PSF to 1,500 anymore. It just isn't sustainable. So in the new age, post-cooling measures is all about swapping out your properties sooner, quicker, making that profit from the initial move up and rolling it into the next one. If you were to continue, and then you will just basically remain the same ones as in the resale market. So that's the interesting takeaway that I got from this. Yeah. But some of the pessimists may take a look and say, oh yeah, sure, then so I try to buy the cheaper one. Now, so here is also another interesting takeaway, right? If you had bought, if you had bought in over here when prices were moving up for Caspian, for Lakeshore and everything, and then come the new kid on the block, Lakefront, right? About 200 PSF more than Caspian, 200 PSF more than Lakeshore, right? You feel that Caspian, Lakeshore are the more good value ones. Very important lesson, very important takeaway over here. And you think that that's a good deal, 200 PSF difference, that's a good deal. You see, but once the cooling measures happen, Caspian and Lakeshore actually saw a dip. You see that dip in the price. Had you entered somewhere here, you have seen a dip in price. It's because a lot of the first-time owners have entered quite a fair bit cheaper. They're okay to dip the price down and jump into another opportunity. Versus Lakefront, the owners have already entered high. They can't really afford, and they don't want to sell and drop their price too low. So it actually was more stable during the lull periods between 2013 and 2018. Notice the price for Lakefront was more stable as opposed to the prices for Caspian and Lakeshore. Despite the fact that Caspian and Lakeshore are more profitable, but of course profitable is assuming you buy it at the start, right? A lot of them buy it at the start, sell it later on, they average out to do well. But they didn't really consider those guys that got caught out thinking they got a good deal because they are significantly cheaper than the new guy on the block, but you just got in at the wrong time. So please pay attention to that, right? Doesn't mean cheaper, doesn't mean low PSF is good, okay? But also doesn't mean you buy the new kid on the block is good. So make sure you sort of think it through, understand what you're trying to do. Okay, now moving on to the next one. Next one is Queenstown. Okay, we take a look at Queen's Peak and Stirling residences. Here I have another interesting takeaway to share with you guys. Okay, so as we take a look at Queen's Peak, which are the most profitable ones, here's where it's quite interesting. Okay, it's a mixture of the three. Primarily what you see over here, just a sprinkling of just two bedders, but if not, it's almost a 50-50 split between 3 bedders and 1 bedders. The ones that we traditionally feel it's not profitable. But the 1 bedders at Queen's Peak, despite its silly curvy balcony, which is something that I really dislike, that curvy balcony basically makes it impossible to do a zip track. I think somebody still managed to do it, but so much wasted space. It's like trying to draw a triangle or rectangle in a circle. Still so profitable. Their 1 bedders can make 200 over $1,220,000. Things a bit different. Once you go into Sterling, the most profitable folks are the three bedders, mostly the three bedders. Only one representative from the one bedders over here. Three lah, primarily three, and 4 and 2 about the same, right? So primarily three bedders, they do better over in Sterling residences. But the interesting thing is, for those of you who are familiar with the area, now if you take a look at this, Queen's Peak and Commonwealth Towers, very close in age, very close in terms of size. As a matter of fact, Commonwealth Towers developed by a more renowned developer, Hong Leong and CDL. And to me, if you ask me, the better condo also in terms of the whole vibes and the feel of the place. Yeah, but why? Why is it that it's performing only at 2.9% average annualized versus Queen's Peak at 4.2%? Now, if we take a look at Commonwealth Towers, and you see the most profitable ones. Actually, if you look at the most profitable ones, they don't really lose out that much to our friends at Queen's Peak. 4 point something, 4 point something. You see? 4 point something. So not too similar if we just look at it. Quite similar, right? Not too different if we look at it just like that. But here's the difference, okay? Is that once you scroll down to the data that pulls down the average, right? What is it that you notice? You notice a lot more one bedders. The one bedders aren't that profitable over at Commonwealth Towers, right? They only average 1% annualized, and immediately once you see like that, you can tell already. Our friends at Queen's Peak making 200,000, Commonwealth Towers making 50, 60, 70,000 dollars for the similar one bedders. Okay, what's the reason? Layouts. Okay, I've talked about this a bit later on, sort of out of the scope of today's video, but if you're interested, you can dive in and take a look for yourself. Commonwealth Towers one bedder layout, very odd, sharp edges, odd angles. Whereas Queen's Peak a bit more regular. The only irregular one is the balcony, but I guess people close one eyes for that lah, as opposed to odd shaped ones. So conclusion from here is layouts do matter. Okay, another thing that you can see from here really is the breakdown of the number of units. Commonwealth Towers, out of 845 units, we have 341 one bedders. So then the one bedders don't do well, it basically pull down the overall average. Over at Queen's Peak, we have a slightly lesser number of one bedders, right? 267. We have a lot of three bedders, and the three bedders do well, so they pull up the average. But then if you compare three bedders versus three bedders, they actually do perform basically the same. So another thing to take note of is that, you know, while all these are very big picture, high level data points, right, you shouldn't just take them like that and just determine, oh, then Queen's Peak is the better buy versus Commonwealth Towers, right? It really, then you have to dive in to take a look at the numbers in greater detail to really decide, okay? Yep, so then I will move on to Red Hill. Yeah, Red Hill, the best performing ones, Metropolitan and Atra. Metropolitan TOP 2009, yeah, and Atra TOP after COVID 2020 with 5.3% and 5.1% returns. And you can see the interesting thing for Metropolitan over here. Atra, you may say, is the newest guy on the block, the one that is right on top of the MRT, the most convenient one. Clue, what does that tell you, right? If you draw the reference to whatever we have in Lentor, okay? Now, the real interesting one comes with Metropolitan, right? Because you see, it's like the standout performer with all the rest. The rest are all hovering at the 2 point something. Then this guy is like easily double of everybody, right? Why is that so? And after having looked at the data, I really feel it's the sweet spot timing that they have come in, right? In terms of product, actually they're all quite atas over there. As a matter of fact, Metropolitan isn't anywhere near as atas as Echelon Essential Sky. Echelon Essential Sky, quite high end, quite nice. Metropolitan, to be fair, stand as it is, nothing wrong with the condo at all, okay? Quite good, but if you go and compare to the others, actually it's nowhere near in terms of the quality over there, but still perform very well. And I boil it down to a very similar rationale and reason to why Lakeshore and Caspian have done well. Notice their timing is very similar to one another. It was at a old price point, really rode up that price move over here, really rode up that price move over here in the during this period, together with our friends at Caspian and Lakeshore. Now if I present it to you like that, then it becomes very clear. The chunk of the profits were made over here, because actually once you look past it, right, they all sort of move relatively similar to one another. So now with that, what are some of the other points to take away over here? And perhaps one of the last interesting point is that 4 out of the 6 top performing condos are not within 1 km of a good school, right? Only Lakeshore and Caspian are within 1 km of Rulang Primary. The other 4 are not within 1 km. So now we have over in Lentor, while also not all of them are within 1 km of a good school, there's a good number of them there is. So now, how are you going to make use of this information to help you with your analysis? But before I go, there's this one important thing that 6 condos have that Lentor doesn't have. And for the first person that can figure that out and put it down in the comments for staying on to the end of the video, you're gonna get $100 as well. I repeat, okay? What is the thing that all these 6 condos have that Lentor doesn't have? Think about it, put it down in the comments, and you stand a chance to win $100. Thank you so much for staying on to the end of this video. We've come to an end for this video, but in our next video, we're going to utilize all that we have learned in this video in terms of the supply, oversupply in a particular area, and what makes the most profitable condos tick in those oversupplied areas, utilizing all of that data, all that we have learned to rank out all the new launches potentially coming up in the Lentor area. So make sure you hit the bell notification button, like, subscribe, so that you can catch that next video. If you've enjoyed the thought process that I've utilized to create this particular video and would like to utilize a similar analytical, data-driven approach in your property planning, upgrade, purchase, and to maximize your property portfolio, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to help you out.